Tonight on Primetime Politics, out of time.
They are seriously in danger to fall.
The Bloc Québécois says it is now actively working to bring the government down after the Trudeau Liberals failed to deliver on two key demands. Coming up, we will speak with the Bloc's Deputy House Leader about the path ahead and what it could mean for an early election. Also,
there's always a way to go forward.
The government says discussions with the Bloc are still going on behind closed doors, so how much of this is political theatre? We'll ask that question to Trudeau's Quebec Lieutenant Public Services Minister Jean-Yves Duclos. And
there's a message that has been sent, and I'd say that that message has been received.
Re-elected, but with a chastened majority. We'll look at the message voters were sending to the Saskatchewan party in last night's election. This is Primetime Politics. Hello everyone, I'm Michael Serapio. The Bloc Québécois says it will make good on its threat and start negotiating today to bring the Trudeau government down. Now, 5 weeks ago, Bloc leader Yves-François Blanchet said if Liberals wanted to avoid an election before Christmas, the government would have to meet two demands. First, expand old age security top-ups to everyone over the age of 64, and second, to safeguard the supply management system in any future trade negotiation. But no guarantees were given on either of those priorities, so Blanchet says now is the time to bring about an early election.
If before they fall, they give us all we have asked under the terms that we have described, we don't have a choice but to take it. But we are not negotiating anything as we speak. We are negotiating with opposition parties in order to have the government be
So that will mean your support as well? Well, with more now on the Bloc's plan, we're joined by Christine Normandin, Deputy House Leader for the Bloc Québécois. Madame Normandin, thank you for joining us again.
It's always a pleasure, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you on. Listen, I want to begin here with the letter that your House Leader, Alain Tanian, shared with members of the Commons, because in that letter, and this is the translation, he says that the Bloc will support motions of no confidence and vote against the government during confidence votes. So support, but if you really believe that the Bloc really believes now is the time to work and bring this government down, why not introduce a motion of non-confidence yourself?
Well, one of the reasons is that there's no real ways to do it for us now, since we've run through our opposition days motion, so it will have to come from somewhere else. So there's no way for us to bring a motion on the floor of the House, and that's why we will be working with oppositions, which we'd have to be doing anyways. Even if it were our own motion, we'd still have to work with other parties in order for having it passed. But it couldn't come from us, as we've used the motions we already had.
Okay, so looking to support instead of introducing your own, but you also add this proviso, or at least Monsieur Tanian adds this proviso, that you will vote against the government in matters of confidence, provided they are presented in a manner consistent with Quebec interests. So does that mean to say then that you will not always be voting against the government?
Well, it will depend on what the other parties bring as motions, for example. If we were to have the same exact motions that we had from the Conservatives the first time, just a motion, very simple and clear, intending to topple the government, we'd vote for it. But if there's something in it that kind of poisons it, well then, two things. We couldn't vote against what we are. For example, if the motion contains something against language, against secularism of the state, something against environment, which we've seen with carbon tax election motions, well, we'd have to vote against it because it would be voting against what we are. And the thing is, if the Conservatives did that, it would we would question the real intentions they have in toppling the government. So I think we've made it pretty clear. The motion has to be simple and acceptable by all parties as well, because if it's not only us, if the Conservatives were to write down a motion with regards to carbon tax, maybe not only the Bloc wouldn't be interested in supporting it.
Mm-hmm. So my extrapolation from that then is that while you are wanting to bring the government down, or say you're working towards it right now, you are still going to be very critical of any motion that comes up from another opposition party. But does that mean to say the door's open to working with the government still on other issues?
Well, if we were to work with the government on other issues, it would have nothing to do with motion, because the motion obviously wouldn't come from the government itself, or it'd be surprising at least. But we've sent clear messages so far that we'd be working with the oppositions, and now the ball is in their camp. I don't know if it translates well, but they know what we'd be voting with. So it's rather simple to present something that's consistent with it, and they have already done so. And with regards to the government, well, we've reached the end of the ultimatum. They had 5 weeks in order to provide us with what we ask, and not only us, on both OAS and the supply management bill. We've had support from all parties, at least on committee level, and we have a support from the population that's 75% and higher on both motions. So it'd be working against not only the Bloc but the population itself. So we gave the government plenty of time, and they haven't done nothing, and that sends a clear message.
Sends a clear message. Now, we did hear from Karina Gould, the government House leader, and she said negotiations are still ongoing behind closed doors. But Yves-François Blanchet seemed to say that he's not open to any type of negotiation. It has to be everything or nothing. So can you give some clarity? Are there still discussions being had behind closed doors?
Well, we kind of switched from conversations with the government to conversations with the opposition parties. So it's clear now, since we've reached the end of the ultimatum, that if the government were to come with something at the table, it would have to be everything or nothing. We wouldn't go for compromises, which we didn't really intend to do neither. At some point, maybe in the means or in the ways to bring something, but it was clear that we wouldn't sell off the bills that we had. If there's a way for them to make them pass prior to a confidence vote, we won't wait for them the way we did. That was the ultimatum, giving them some time. Now time is passed. If there's a confidence motion tomorrow, well, too bad for them. They will be the ones responsible for their own fall. But if they come with something, we couldn't vote against what's good for Quebec and for Canadians, for that matter, with regards to OAS and in supply management. We have to vote for it, but time has run out for the government. So it would have to be everything on the table or nothing, and rather fast, because now they have they have a big win coming in front of them, and we're kind of working against them now, which is the difference. We weren't doing so before the ultimatum.
So as you say, it has to be all or nothing, and most definitely there are no more negotiations, no more talking between you, your government House leader, your leader, behind closed doors with the Liberals.
We're working with the opposition parties, as we clearly stated we'd be doing. If they want to come and if they offer something, we'll see it. But it's not negotiations. It would have to be something very clear that would just provide us with exactly what we wanted. So there's no real openings for negotiations, and it's all because of them. They had 5 weeks to start maybe asking for different things that we could have said yes, could have said no. But now, as soon as there is an opposition motion, a vote of no confidence, we'd vote with in order to topple the government. So the time has run off, and it's all their fault.
Time has run out, as you say. But you know, as you do those negotiations, we already know that the NDP say, while they are ready for an election, they say now is not the time to actually trigger one. So how meaningful is your threat without the NDP? Because you need them to topple this government.
And it will, of course, be their decision. We cannot force them to vote with us, but that would be a political price for them to pay. After tearing the agreement they had with the government and making and be very vocal about it, they'd be voting with the government and against the elderly and the farm workers. There'd be maybe it would feel like a bit of a sell-off if they did support the government once again. So there would be a political price to pay with that. It's all up to them, but still, I think it would look bad on them, and they most likely know it.
Good to see you, Normandin. I always appreciate the time. Thank you for this.
It's a pleasure.
Well, the Prime Minister was asked about the Bloc Québécois deadline. Here's what we heard from Justin Trudeau, including what he had to say about talks with Yves-François Blanchet.
Listen, over the past number of weeks, I've had some very good conversations with Mr. Blanchet. We agree as a party that we need to work on supporting vulnerable people and doing more for our seniors. It's one of the reasons why we've been so enthusiastic about delivering dental care to so many seniors across the country. And we're going to continue to look for ways to help Canadians through these difficult times and work constructively with everyone in the House.
Well, with his thoughts on this and other matters, we're now joined by Jean-Yves Duclos, Minister of Procurement, and the Prime Minister's Quebec Lieutenant. Minister, thank you for coming here.
Thank you, Michael, and hello to everyone listening.
Yeah. So we just heard the Bloc say that they're going to start negotiating with the opposition parties to bring your government down, and yet you call that an artificial threat. Does that mean you're not taking it seriously?
I call it an artificial deadline because it's indeed an artificial deadline to fix today the last day after which they will be working for Quebecers and other Canadians. Now, there's no deadline that we have fixed for when we stop working for Canadians and Quebecers. So I find that to be very artificial, that on this particular day, they will not be working anymore for Quebecers.
Mm-hmm. Artificial, but do you take the threat seriously that they're working with the opposition now?
Well, we are working with the NDP and the Bloc, obviously less so with the Conservatives, since we've been forming a minority government in 2021. That's the essence of a minority government. So despite this artificial deadline, I believe and I really hope that it will be possible to keep working with the Bloc and the NDP to do the things that Canadians expect of us to do.
Mm-hmm. Except for the Bloc, it really does boil down to these two issues. The expansion of the OAS top-up to those that are 65 and over, protecting the dairy industry essentially and farmers in your own province. Do you risk being on the wrong side of these issues in Quebec if you don't support what the Bloc is trying to push through?
On supply management, we know is in the Senate. They need a bit more time to proceed as diligently as they can with the last step regarding the supply management bill, which will indeed protect farms in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada in the face of the threats that we're seeing from abroad when it comes to supporting our family farms. On help to seniors, what we've been saying to Mr. Blanchet is that yes, the intention is good, but the bill that he is presenting is flawed. And the most important flaw is that this bill would give couples like his couple and my couple, when we retire, more money, more additional support from the old age security program than a vulnerable senior with, say, $25,000 would get alone. So that's not good. That's not fair. Vulnerable seniors need and deserve more support than people like me or Mr. Blanchet.
Do people understand that, though? Because that, at the end of the day, is a technical argument that you're making. But when people are struggling financially, as they have been all across the country, Quebec included, does that type of argument have resonance to potential voters?
Well, it's not a technical issue. It's a real issue that matters to how we can
Except
provide.
that, you know, when people are struggling with affordability, they see the Bloc Québécois leader standing there and saying that what we're trying to do is put more money into your pocket, which is an easier message for people to understand.
Maybe easier to communicate. It takes about half a sentence, but if you complete the sentence, you then end up understanding that what he would do is to give more money to more affluent seniors than to vulnerable seniors, which is not the right thing to do.
Mm. Now, I do wonder, though, about how you and now that you're Quebec Lieutenant, how the Quebec caucus of the Liberal Party is feeling right now. Because when you look at the numbers, the Bloc Québécois is very much in the lead. Liberals right now in a statistical tie with Conservatives. How united is the party right now, given these issues, given the ongoing issues about the Prime Minister's leadership and questions as to whether or not he should continue?
There's an important difference between unity and unanimity. We'll never have unanimity in the Liberal caucus. We never had unanimity in the Liberal caucus since I've been in the caucus in 2015. And it's great that we're not always unanimous, because the diversity of our views also comes from the diversity of our big and great country. So that's important, that every MP brings his or her perspective on how to support Canadians. And that rarely comes with unanimity, but there is a strong sense of unity because we know what's coming. We know what's coming. Pierre Poilievre, he wants to cut, and cut. His ideology is always and completely around cuts for dental care, cuts on old age security, cuts on daycare, cuts on farmer care. He wants to cut everything, every possible thing that Canadians seem to depend on. That's not something which I believe Quebecers and hopefully other Canadians will approve at the next elections.
Except that in Quebec, it's not the Conservatives who are right now leading the polls, it's the Bloc Québécois. What argument will you make to Quebecers that it should be the Liberals that they're supporting as opposed to the Bloc Québécois? Again, the Bloc Québécois putting up these very popular issues.
Everyone in Quebec knows that the next federal government will not be a Bloc Québécois government. There is only two possible governments after the next election. It's a Liberal or Conservative government. The Bloc Québécois will not form the next federal government. So we have to choose as Quebecers which option we prefer. Is it the Liberal option that positive, optimistic, and respectful, or the politics of Pierre Poilievre, which is insults, lies, and chaos, which obviously flows from the South, but which I believe most Quebecers will not want to see in Canada.
Mm-hmm. You know, as we talk about this, of course, that's the next election. Right now, the business of the House is delayed because of this point of privilege from the Conservative Party. How much longer is your government willing to put up with this point of privilege before you either unite with other parties to try to put an end to it or prorogue Parliament?
Well, this needs to stop because each day that the House of Commons spends discussing this silly motion of the Conservatives costs a lot of money to Canadians. That has to stop. We are in a minority government. It will stop only when the NDP and the Bloc work with us to move to things that matter to Canadians. Now, the Conservatives keep spending all of their time and Canadians' money on that silly motion, which is blocking the important work of the House of Commons. We really hope that it's going to end very soon.
But are you in negotiations right now with other opposition parties to have it come to an end soon?
Yes, we are discussing with the opposition parties, the Bloc and the NDP, as to when and how we're going to end that silly behavior on the part of the Conservatives.
Okay. You know, before we're done, I also want to talk about advance requests for medically assisted death, because as you know, the province of Quebec will be moving ahead with it as of tomorrow. People can start requesting it, but of course, that's not where the legislation is at right now. And your consultations, the ones that have been announced by your government, will begin in November. Are you too late to the game that you are beginning consultations after Quebec is basically going to allow the procedure to go forward?
Two things on that. First, it's as we all know, it's important to repeat that this is a very personal thing that each Canadian has the right to see differently in his family, with himself. So this is all very personal and sensitive. The second thing is that we have moved in the right manners. People sometimes feel it's been too prudent, others feel it's been too fast. We've been moving over the last 8 years on making sure that people can live and die in dignity and according to their own will. But that is a difficult path to follow because we want to protect the dignity and the free choice, the free will of people. We also need to protect those that may be vulnerable in those specific circumstances. We're not yet ready in the federal government to change the criminal code on this particular aspect. We need to have more work and more conversations with Canadians, including caregivers and many others that also care very deeply about the right of everyone to live and to die in dignity.
But you're not, to my understanding, challenging what Quebec is doing at the court level. Are you giving up the responsibility to Quebec?
No, what we're not doing is to sue Quebec in court. The reason that we're not doing that is that we need more time to determine what is the right path to follow for the federal government.
Even if it's violating the law as it stands right now?
So we're not suing the Quebec government as we now speak because we need more time to know what path we will be following. We know there are increasingly important views heard across Canada, obviously including in Quebec, views that say that there is a path to follow to proceed with these advanced determinations of medical aid in dying, but done in the right way. We still need more time to find what that right way would be.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we don't have more time. I'd like to go on, but Minister, thank you very much for speaking with us this evening.
Thank you, Michael, and have a great day, everyone.
Well, time now for a look at what else happened in politics today. We're now exactly 7 days away from Election Day in the United States. Candidates have less than a week to make their pitch to voters in what polls suggest is an extremely close race. Tonight, Kamala Harris is speaking at the Ellipse right outside the White House, in the same place where Donald Trump held a rally right before his supporters stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Meanwhile, Trump is holding a rally in Pennsylvania tonight, continuing his tour of the key swing states, but also defending Sunday's controversial rally at Madison Square Garden. Trump calls the rally a love fest despite derogatory comments about Latinos, Jews, Palestinians, African Americans, and being criticized for being misogynistic.
Well, there are two important pieces of work to do here. The first is we've got to choose a cabinet and make sure that that piece of work is done so that we can begin delivering for British Columbians. And the second is to make sure that the legislature works as well.
That is British Columbia's Premier-designate David Eby. After a week of recounts, the NDP leader was asked to form government by the province's lieutenant governor yesterday, and in turn, Conservative leader John Rutstad conceded defeat in a post on X last night.
It's not lost on me, or it is not lost on your Saskatchewan party team, that you have provided us with the honor to form a government in this great province for a fifth consecutive time.
And the Saskatchewan party has won another majority government, but the results from last night saw a significant decline in support for the party led by Scott Moe. As it stands, the Saskatchewan party won 35 ridings, down from 48, and the NDP doubled their seat count to 26, making the opposition stronger than it has been in over a decade.
The close result tonight is a message that the people of Saskatchewan want and deserve a government that puts them first, and we are not going to stop until that vision is a reality.
Well, with more on the results in Saskatchewan, we're now joined by Murray Mandryk, columnist with the Regina Leader-Post. Murray, good to see you again. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Listen, Scott Moe, he did acknowledge the loss of support last night. Yes, the Saskatchewan party won, but he did lose cabinet ministers and has a much reduced majority. What message were voters sending last night?
A mixed one, because there was actually a message coming from urban Saskatchewan. You're seeing this repeated throughout at least the prairies. We saw it in Calgary and Edmonton during the Alberta election. We saw it in Winnipeg during the Manitoba election. There is a different take in prairie politics between those living in the actual larger urban centers and those living in the more rural areas. The more rural areas are concerned about sort of the economic issues, the carbon tax, everything that Scott Moe was talking about. But the message that he was talking about in terms of what he didn't, or what he implied he didn't hear or address, was related to very much meat and potato issues: healthcare, education, in many ways the cost of living, and to a certain extent social policy issues that are much more prevalent in places like Regina and Saskatoon as anywhere. People think of this province as a rural place where we have potash and we grow wheat and lentils and canola and everything, and that's what we are. But we're also a place that has every problem every major city has, which is problems with fentanyl, problems with homelessness, problems with a whole bunch of other things that makes it very difficult for any politician, particularly a premier, to find the balance. And I guess he was trying to find that balance last night. Had he found it earlier, maybe he wouldn't have had quite the same results as he did last night.
Okay, so what does that mean then going forward? Because, while, there were people, as you said, who were very much agreeing with the themes he did stick with, it does create this urban-rural divide. How does he negotiate that divide when clearly his support is even more rural-based this time around than the last time around?
Well, that's a very difficult thing, and it's going to be tough to articulate that, because it's with whom you articulate your message, through cabinet and otherwise. When you elect a lot of rural MLAs to reflect the interests of rural people, that's to whom they communicate. So it's very difficult for them to communicate to the urban faction, the urban half of the province, so to speak. And that's going to be his huge challenge going forward, Michael. I don't know exactly how you do that properly or effectively if you're a political leader. The problem was obviously in reverse for the NDP. While they very effectively, with I think 15 teachers running for them, there was a huge teachers' labor dispute in the last year in Saskatchewan. There was lots of nurses running and healthcare providers running for the NDP, many of whom got elected. Whilst they were able to communicate those concerns in urban Saskatchewan, they have an equal problem relating to the rural portion of this province, where they made a few inroads. But it's all about the two solitudes right now. And as I say, in some ways, I don't think we're much more different than most places in the country. And I think probably reflective of what you might see ahead in the federal election.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we look at all these provincial campaigns wondering what it does mean for a federal election. But, you know, before we're done, we should talk about the NDP, though. You talked about the number of candidates, the teachers that ran for them. They did not win last night, but the NDP in Saskatchewan did double their seat count. So you talk about the challenge for the party. What went right in this campaign that the party might be able to utilize the next time around?
Well, in terms of the NDP, they ran a very good campaign, a smart campaign where it wasn't just centered around their leader, Carla Beck, who is a person that comes across as she is, which is a very nice person who's rather saleable and everything else. Maybe not as dynamic as some political leaders you're seeing in the country right now, but maybe people are a little tired than that. So they have assets like her. They have assets like a lot of smart urban professionals running for them. What they're going to struggle with is relating to those core industries, to agriculture, to economic development, to small business that is so crucial to not only Saskatchewan, but most everywhere. And once again, it just sort of reflects the divide in this country that we're seeing right now that isn't necessarily completely healthy. Both leaders, interestingly, talked about the need to get over that divide. Neither one gave me a clue as to how exactly they intend to do that.
Well, of course, we'll watch as the next government is sworn in. But Murray, I appreciate it. You were up late last night doing the CBC special. I know you're up at 5 a.m. giving radio interviews today, so I really appreciate you taking the time and staying awake for us right now. Thank you for this.
The old man needs his sleep. I thank you for this.
Murray, you take care. And that is our program for this Tuesday. I'm Michael Serapio. For everyone here at CPAC, thank you for watching. Primetime Politics is back tomorrow night. Until then, take care.